Welcome to NewsNation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time. The next guest, Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, has suggested the three-eye atlas is actually some type of alien technology sent here from another solar system. And he's come on the show before to lay out the scientific reasoning behind that startling hypothesis. Well, this weekend he made headlines again when he said that the object could actually be on a mission to release, quote, mini probes that could invade Earth. Avi Loeb joins us now. He's head of the Galileo Project, director of Harvard University's Institute for Theory and Computation, also the best-selling author of the book Extraterrestrial. Okay, I'll bite. What are these mini probes you're talking about, and how would this even be possible?
Well, there are two possibilities. If it's a technological object, then it might maneuver itself. We haven't seen such a maneuver so far. But the other possibility is that it may release some other objects that reach the planets, and it will continue along its course to the next star. And we just need to keep our eyes on the ball, the way that basketball coaches often say to their team members, because we don't know, but it may well be just a rock which has some ice on the surface that evaporates, in which case we will say it's natural. You know, I defined a new scale last month that is now called the Loeb scale, where 0 is a natural object and 10 is a technological object. And at this point, I give it around a 4. But if it looks like a comet as it comes closer to the sun, I'll reduce the rank closer to 0.
Well, 4 is not 10, so it's actually, you think there's more of a shot that it really is actually just a comet?
Yeah, the reason was that the inferred size of the object was huge. It was between 20 and 46 kilometers, unless there is a dense cloud of dust around it that is scattering sunlight. This is an object, if that is the size of it, that is 1,000,000 times more massive than the previous interstellar objects we've seen, and that's quite unlikely. There is not enough material in interstellar space to bring such a huge
the fact
object.
that it's unusually large is what's making you doubt that or at least be open to the possibility that it's not just a comet?
That's one aspect, and the second is that the trajectory is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun. Now, we will get a good image of it when it comes close to Mars on October 3rd. We don't need to wait a lot. And there is a camera called HiRISE on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter that can image it with a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers. So we should be able to tell how much light is reflected off the object and from that infer its size. And I very much look forward to that. You know, the fun of doing science is that we are guided by evidence and not prejudice.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is asking NASA to monitor Three-Eye Atlas and to send an orbital spacecraft even closer to it as it passes. That would give, what are the chances that NASA will agree to do that? Because that would certainly give us even more data, right? Even more images.
Yeah, this came because she actually spoke with me on the phone, and I mentioned
the paper.
So you
put her up to it.
Yeah, and I suggested doing that. NASA has a number of facilities that it can use in space to get us more data, and she did send a formal letter to Sean Duffy, the interim administrator of NASA. We are very much in line in terms of the way we think about this object and about the UAP that, in fact, Representative Luna is the chair of the task force that tomorrow will host a hearing.
So did NASA agree to do this? Have you heard any word? Because time is short, right? This thing is going to be here pretty soon.
Yeah, well, I spoke with the principal investigator of several of the missions, and definitely when the object comes close to Mars, the HiRISE camera will be used, and several other observatories will look at it. So I'm very much hopeful. I look forward to the data.
Comet 3I Atlas was discovered on July 1st. According to NASA, it is just the third known object to be discovered within our own solar system that originated from outside our solar system. And it has drifted for millions, possibly even billions of years before it arrived here. Joining us to talk more about this, NewsNation special correspondent and investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Ross, it is always so good to see you. And first, let's just start with this assertion by Professor Loeb. Why does he believe this could be an alien craft, and what is your take here?
Good evening, Natasha. Well, look, I think the primary reason why Professor Loeb thinks that it might be something of a technological origin rather than something natural interstellar is because of its trajectory, that it does pass unusually behind the sun at its closest point behind when it's near the sun, and more importantly the speed. He attaches a lot of significance to the speed. But I do notice, Natasha, in his blog, Professor Loeb has actually said, and I quote, by far the most likely outcome will be that this is a completely natural interstellar object, probably a comet. And boy, is Professor Loeb copying it at the moment from traditional astronomy. He's really drawing a lot of fire for his suggestion that this might be something technological, something alien, because frankly, there isn't really a lot of evidence to support that claim.
You know, he is suggesting using the sunsetting NASA spacecraft Juno to intercept this object, to use that opportunity. Can you help explain that move and if there is value to that?
Okay, well, Juno is obviously a spacecraft sent out by NASA that's currently orbiting Jupiter. There is potentially sufficient fuel on board to attempt this rendezvous, but it's a huge expense and it's a huge diversion of a spacecraft from its originally assigned task, which is to investigate Jupiter. I think personally there's a lot of merit in the broad idea of what Professor Loeb is suggesting, which is that we do need to resource the investigation of so-called techno-signatures more rigidly, that we do need to start looking more aggressively than just using SETI, which is only looking for, that's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's only looking for radio signals, radio waves. And frankly, any alien civilization probably wouldn't be using electromagnetic energy in that way. So there's a frustration among a lot of people in science, including Professor Loeb, that not enough resources is going to looking for other techno-signatures. I just don't think, from talking to many astronomers, it's a good idea to go diverting existing spacecraft from, for example, Juno in orbit around Jupiter, or suggesting that these are necessarily alien probes with hostile intent. It's inflammatory, and frankly, there's not a lot of evidence for it on current evidence and data.
Okay, so, you know, Professor Loeb saying that Congresswoman Luna called him about this potential Juno move, and now she is asking NASA about the feasibility of, rather than sending Juno careening into the surface of Jupiter and ending its life cycle, to instead be diverted and to help deal with this. Do you think that NASA is likely to do this, or what is the likely response here from everything I'm seeing you shaking your head already?
NASA is chronically under-resourced right now. It's taking a huge squeeze under the current administration. I think the chances of any deviation from existing schedules are extremely unlikely, and most scientists would say that it's highly implausible, including Professor Loeb himself. He's acknowledged his speculation at the moment is unlikely.
And let me ask very quickly, Ross, do we have the technology and the ability to intercept and deal with, in the future, anything alien in nature, especially if it is hostile, as Avi Loeb is raising his hand and saying this might be?
Officially, no. Unofficially, I suspect the US has a lot more than it's letting on about. I do think that the United States is well aware of NHI. The evidence is indeed becoming overwhelming. And frankly, I suspect that they have technology and equipment that they're keeping in the black, which they're not disclosing to the public. And that's the big issue right now. I think the better emphasis is on looking for the evidence that we have on our doorstep than suggesting quite extravagant missions that would cost an enormous amount of money and resources and time, which are further out into the universe or the galaxy.
As Banfield viewers are well aware, not all mysteries are whodunits. Some of the biggest mysteries in the universe are all about other questions, like the question facing sky watchers tonight. What is it? On the 1st of July, NASA detected a mysterious object speeding toward Earth, and some actual bona fide experts think it might not be your typical space rock or maybe any kind of rock or a natural phenomenon at all. For one thing, 3I Atlas, as it's called, is interstellar, meaning it's from outside Earth's solar system. That is incredibly rare. In fact, it's only the third object from parts unknown to ever visit us. It's also moving very, very quickly, 135,000 miles an hour. Right now, it is near Jupiter, but it's expected to fly by Earth in late November, maybe early December, about 3.5 months from now, at which time, my next guest thinks, we might get the answer to an even bigger mystery, whether humans are alone in the universe. Avi Loeb is a theoretical physicist and professor at Harvard University. I'm thrilled to have him back on the program. Good to see you again. Okay, so for everybody who doesn't know, this is incredibly rare. It's a third known interstellar object ever detected. Why? Why is that so rare? I mean, why do we have so few of them?
Well, thanks for having me. They're difficult to spot. There aren't many that are passing through the solar system, but this one is quite unusual. It's relatively bright, meaning that it has, if it's a solid object, has a diameter of 20 kilometers. That's bigger than Manhattan Island. And there isn't enough material in rocks in interstellar space to give us such a giant rock once per decade. That's the duration of the survey of the sky. We expect once per 10,000 years, such a giant rock. And so the question is, what is it? Now, people argue that it must be a comet, but for a comet, you usually see a cometary tail trailing behind it. In this case, the deepest image that we had with the Hubble Space Telescope revealed that it has glow in front of it, not behind it. And then the trajectory of this object is extremely unusual, fine-tuned. It lies in the plane of the orbits of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. The chance for that happening at random is 1 in 500. And then it comes at a very special time when it passes close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. The chance of that happening for this object to pass so close to these as they move around the sun is 1 in 20,000. And when it gets closest to the sun, the Earth would be on the opposite side, so we can't observe it. That could be on purpose if it wants to do some maneuver, taking advantage of the sun's gravity or sending probes to the inner planets. So it looks quite unusual. It came from a direction where there are lots of stars in the sky. That's why we had a hard time identifying it. The question is it technological?
Well, it could be. Or is it possible it is a comet and the tail, you might not see it right now, but the closer it gets, you might see the tail. You might then say, oh, it is a comet. That's a possibility too?
It is a possibility, but we don't see any trace of gas around it, no fingerprints of molecules or atoms. So the question is, does it really look like a comet? And of course, as it gets closer to the sun, it will warm up, and we should be able to see clearer signatures if it is a comet. I have a scale that I invented for the purpose of this object, where 0 would be a natural object and 10 would be a definitely technological object. I give it a 4 right now.
Okay.
And within the coming months, we might realize that it's actually a 0 if it looks like it's a natural object, or a 10. If it's a 10, then the question is, what do we do about it? And it comes closest to the sun on the 29th of October. It may well be that if we realize it's technological, the stock market will crash because there will be a huge uncertainty.
What do we do? Okay, that's the question. First of all, A, what do you do to find out what it is? And B, if it is what you think, what do we do?
Right, so the response has to depend on its properties and its intent. What is it doing as it comes closer to us? And it's just like having a visitor in your backyard. You can't decide about the policy for all visitors. It really depends on the intent of the visitor, and it's just next door. So it's not like getting a radio signal from a star that is thousands of light years away, where we would have plenty of time to decide how to respond. And I believe that we need an international organization that will make policy decisions about such an object. We are worried about existential threats from artificial intelligence, from global climate change, from an asteroid impact. but we never discuss alien technology.
No, I mean this is now taken it to a different level. I don't really know what to say other than perhaps. I mean, we've spoken before. You've sold me on the fact we need to study this, and using what we have up there to potentially study this before it actually arrives or as it arrives. You make a compelling case, sir. I don't know what more to make of it than that, but we'll keep a careful eye on it, Mr. Loeb.
Exactly, and every few months now in the future, the Rubin telescope will find a new interstellar object. I think we should do the same for all.
Okay, that's you sold me. We'll see if everybody else agrees. Avi Loeb, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
What if an interstellar object whirling through our solar system is actually a nuclear-powered spacecraft sent by aliens to test how humans respond? That's what a noted astrophysicist believes might be the case, and he says an image from the Hubble telescope backs him up. Most scientists agree that the so-called 3I Atlas is a comet from another solar system. But Harvard scientist Avi Loeb claimed on this show a couple of weeks ago that it could actually be some type of alien technology. Now, that's a controversial opinion all on its own. But he's now going a step further, arguing that the 3I Atlas could be a nuclear-powered alien spacecraft. Loeb says the Hubble picture appears to show the object emitting its own light. The object also appears to lack something that all comets have in common, and that's a tail. So what is this thing exactly? Well, joining us now is Avi Loeb. He's the head of the Galileo Project, director of Harvard University's Institute for Theory and Computation. He's also the best-selling author of the book Extraterrestrial. Great to have you back on the show. So you now say this is not only an alien spaceship, but it's nuclear-powered? Why are you saying that?
Well, thanks for having me. First, I should say that if the light that we observe from this object is reflection of sunlight, its size needs to be bigger than Manhattan Island, 20 kilometers or so. And there isn't enough rocky material in interstellar space to deliver a rock of that size earlier than 10,000 years from now. So the question is, what is it? And its orbit, the trajectory that it takes, is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. That's a chance of 1 in 500. And moreover, the timing.
What does that tell you? What does that trajectory tell you?
Well, it indicates that perhaps it was designed by some intelligence.
That's something steering it.
Not necessarily, but the trajectory itself was chosen to be such that this object will pass close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. The chance of that happening, the timing of its arrival is perfect for that, with a likelihood of 1 in 20,000. And so I'm just saying we should observe it. It doesn't look like it's a random occurrence. The size, the trajectory, the fact that it comes so close to 3 planets in our solar system, and actually it comes closest to the sun on October 29th, when the Earth would be on the other side of the sun. We won't be able to observe it. I'm analyzing right now the best image we have of it. We don't have any evidence for gas around it in the spectrum that was taken, but we do see some fuzz, some halo of scattered light around it in front of it.
We're looking at the image now. What does that tell you, that halo of light around it?
Right, so usually for comets, you see a cometary tail trailing the objects from behind because it's being pushed by the radiation from the sun. The dust particles are pushed to be behind, to lag behind the object. In this case, what we are seeing is a glow in front of the object. And I'm analyzing first if this is caused by dust. The amount of dust is very little. Over 6 months, the amount of dust that will be ablated from the object to generate this glow is just less than a millimeter thick. So it could be just dirt on a solid surface of such an object. And the question is, what is the nature of this object? Of course, as it gets closer to the sun, we would get a better view of it. and we could use spacecraft like Juno next to Jupiter. I spoke about it with Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She called me on the phone, and I gave her an update about the object, and she encouraged in a formal letter she wrote to the head of NASA, Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, to encouraging NASA to use Juno, which is next to Jupiter, to come close to 3I Atlas when it will get there on March 16th, 2026.
So Juno could gather some data, take some pictures of this thing?
Yes, but also a camera that is next to Mars, because this object will come very close to Mars as well on October 3rd, 2025, and it will be within a distance of 29 million kilometers from Mars. And there is a 0.5 meter camera that is currently used to watch Mars itself, but I encourage the team that operates it to look at 3I Atlas, and they can get a pixel resolution of 30 kilometers around this object, so we can get a better sense of what the nucleus of this object is.
And super quick, Avi, is there any reason to be concerned about this?
Yeah, you never know what kind of intent it has, and I think we should, in the future, have some international organization that decides how to respond to a visitor to our backyard, because that visitor may enter through the front door.
Avi Loeb, fascinating.
This supposed comet is catching the attention of some of the nation's most renowned scientists, as one Harvard professor is raising the theory this may actually be a piece of alien technology. According to renowned theoretical physicist Professor Avi Loeb, the comet is on an extremely unusual path, moving too fast to be bound by the sun's gravity, breaking a typically seen orbital trajectory. And while this comet poses no current threat, Professor Loeb believes more data should be collected to uncover the nature of this object and whether it has the potential to create risks in the future. Joining us now to discuss more is that scientist himself, Harvard professor of science and author of Extraterrestrial, the First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, Avi Loeb. Professor, it's always so good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's wonderful to see you, Natasha.
So, Professor Loeb, your recent paper suggests that this object might actually be alien technology rather than just another comet. What exactly about the speed, the trajectory, the behavior leads you to consider this as a possibility?
Well, first, it's relatively bright for its distance, implying that if it's a solid object, it has to be 20 kilometers in diameter. That's twice as big as the giant asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. And the previous objects we saw from interstellar space were only hundreds of meters in size. So there is just not enough rocky material in interstellar space to provide us with a 20-kilometer rock that appears once per decade. But more importantly, the trajectory is very unusual. It's aligned with the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And the chance of that happening is 1 in 500. And then it also, the timing of its arrival is very fine-tuned because it comes very close to Jupiter, to Mars, and to Venus. And the chance of that happening is 1 in 20,000. And moreover, it's moving in the opposite direction to the motion of the Earth around the sun. And when it will come closest to the sun, the Earth would be on the opposite side. So we won't be able to observe it. That's the point in time when it can do a maneuver with the aid of the sun's gravity. And that will happen on October 29th. And I already heard from a fan that he is trading options against the volatility of the markets, the stock market, with an expiration date because of the October 29th, because if it's alien tech, that would change the future in a quite dramatic way. It will have a huge.
I mean, so many questions. So, I mean, if I have this correct, I believe you've proposed using a Richter scale before to assess such objects. A 0 means this is totally of natural origin. 10 means this is clearly engineered. Based on what we know about this object and what you're observing, what number would you give it now?
We don't have enough data. It depends how much weight you give to the unusual orbit. The trajectory is extremely rare and fine-tuned. And depending on that, how much you assign to that, you will give a rank that is somewhere in the middle. It's difficult to assess at this time, but we will get, the good news is we'll get much more better data in the coming months. And the fun of doing science is that you can ask questions at first and then answer them with data. And we don't need to have an opinion, especially in a blind date like this one. All bets are off. This visitor came from interstellar space, and it's possible that it targeted the inner solar system for a technological reason.
From what you're describing, this sounds like one of the worst blind dates potentially I've ever heard of. Do we have the capabilities right now to track, intercept, and even respond to something non-human entering our solar system as soon as October?
Well, it will be moving relative to Earth at nearly 100 kilometers per second when it's closest to the sun, simply because it moves in the opposite direction to the motion of the Earth. There is no way for us to send a rocket that will intercept with it from Earth. However, I wrote a paper last week that there is actually a spacecraft that is orbiting Jupiter. It's called Juno, and it's at the end of its life. The plan was to send it straight into Jupiter in September 2025 because the mission has ended. But what I realized is that if instead of giving it a push so that it ends its life inside Jupiter, you give it a push away from Jupiter, if the push is sufficient, then it will actually intercept the orbit of 3I Atlas, this new object, in March 2026, when it will come very close to Jupiter. And on Tuesday this week, just a few days ago, I had a phone call from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who asked me for an update about 3I Atlas. And I mentioned this to her, and she wrote a letter to NASA on Thursday last week, just 2 days ago, in which she encourages NASA to look into the possibility of using Juno as a probe of 3I Atlas.
I really appreciate that update, and I hope you keep us updated on this as well. Professor Avi Loeb, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And if you want to hear more directly from Professor Avi Loeb, check out the Truth of the Matter podcast. Our conversation now has more than 500,000 views. He talks about how AI will change UAP research, the potential risks of contacting extraterrestrial life, and what keeps him up at night. You can find my podcast, The Truth of the Matter, on NewsNation's YouTube page, or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.